Round two of our quarterback rankings. We did 32 through 16 earlier in the week. We will finish it off with 15 to who is number one. Of course, you're watching the All 32 Potties. Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Chiari. We are a proud member of the CLNS Media Network, brought to you by Prizepicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download today. Use the code CLNS to get 50 off when you play your first five, or to get $50 when you play your first five Prizepicks run your game. You think I'd only read that thing about 652 times, and still I find myself looking at the papers. So we did our 32 through 16, as I mentioned. A lot of young quarterbacks in that 22, 23 to 16 range, including Drake May, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, and a couple of veteran guys like Tua, like Trevor Lawrence, and Kyler Murray. Let's go now 15 through 11. I will kick us off here, Will. Brock Purdy, 5 years, $265 million this offseason, including $182 million in total guarantees. He has to be higher on this list when the season's done, and he might be if their talent stays healthy, right? But what we found out last year was once the talent started to erode because of the injuries, Purdy was fine, but he's not someone who elevates that football team. And when you're paying someone $265 million, $182 guaranteed, I feel like that's kind of what you need him to do. I know the quarterback money is crazy, and we talked about it, that maybe his best number would have been in the 45 to 48, somewhere in there. Just not the way it works. I had Geno Smith at 14, 70% completion percentage last year. That's a career high. Played all 17 games, threw for over 4,300 yards. Touchdowns to interceptions, not great, 21 to 15. He'll be 35 years old in November. I have been a card-carrying member, I believe, as of you, of the Geno Smith fan club. I think he's going to make Vegas really frisky this year. Potential playoff team. Just that's how I feel. We'll see what the summer looks like, but I like Geno Smith. At 13, I have Jordan Love. Jordan Love's best football was in the second half of his first year as a starter 2 years ago. Last year was erratic. And look, the injuries played a role in that, but he too getting paid a lot of money. I think the potential is there to be a top 10 quarterback, no question. I think he's got all the physical skills, but I got to see it, man. And he was awful in the playoff game against Philadelphia, just absolutely awful. I believe he threw 3 interceptions in that game, no touchdowns. At number 12, I have a soft spot for this guy, Baker Mayfield. He had an awesome year last year, but he's put together a couple here in Tampa now where you're like, okay, I know the coordinators both got jobs off this. We'll see. He's got another new coordinator, but now I feel like this is the Baker offense. And I feel like with the weapons that he has, and again, they invested again. Emeka Egbuka was picked by them this year, even though they have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and McMillan, who was a really good rookie for them last year out of Washington. I just feel like Baker, 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns last year, 16 picks. That's going to be part of Baker's game, as I think I mentioned in the first episode. Yeah, but Baker thinks his arm can put the ball anywhere. He has that in him, and he'll make some throws. And some guys need more of that. Caleb Williams, we talked about. He needs to do a little bit more of that. Maybe Baker needs to do a little bit less, but I had Baker 12. And then I had C.J. Stroud, who was probably
Did you look at my list?
I had him probably 6th or 7th last year. I have him 11th. And look, he went from 5 interceptions to 12. We talked a ton about their offensive line problems. You talked a ton about maybe some of his decision-making, some of his accuracy issues. New offensive coordinator there, and Nick Caley, who was under Josh McDaniels, then spent the last couple of years under Sean McVay. I don't know that their offensive line's any better. In fact, you could maybe argue that it's worse. We'll see. I think he's good. But now we're holding off on the bust after year one. He was going to Canton. Now, okay, show me a little something. So there I had Purdy, Smith, Love, Mayfield, Stroud, 15 through 11.
I also have Purdy, Smith, Love, Mayfield, and Stroud.
Great minds.
It's really boring, but I have a lot of the same reasoning you do. I wanted to find room for some of these guys to be higher. Transparently, I'll get to Dak and Goff and Hurts very quickly here. Obviously in a second, but I just had a hard time. I like a little bit more of the consistency or longevity or situation some of those other guys are in. Purdy, I think, needs to be more around 11-ish to kind of have the Niners get back to where they want to be. I think anything higher than that is awesome, but needs to be a little better next year. I just think he wasn't great last year. When it comes to Geno, I think he kind of is who he is at this point, and I think being the 14th best quarterback is not an insult. I think he's in that Kirk Cousins class. I just used the Kirk Cousins Dak class of like, he should make you a playoff team pretty much every year if you're in the right situation. He needs a little help for sure, but he's a damn good thrower of the football, and until that arm goes, which it hasn't yet. Geno again, right, didn't play a lot of football for a long time, so was able to kind of, his body at 35 is probably a little bit better than the average 35-year-old quarterback. Jordan Love's too much inconsistency for me. Transparently, I almost put Baker at 9. I moved him last second. I just feel like it was a little disrespectful to Dak and Goff, who
it's kind of where I was. Yeah,
I felt like Baker needs one more year, and he's a top 10 guy. And I know maybe that's harsh because I just think we'll look back at Baker's story. We talked about him in Cleveland like he was the worst effing quarterback we've ever seen. In reality, like he had one bad year. And yeah, obviously it wasn't good, and Carolina wasn't good, but like he kind of refound his groove. And then Stroud at 11, CJ was disappointing last year, and I don't think it's unfair to say that. I also think that there's every reason he'll be 7, 8, maybe higher, going into 2027, or 2026. So that's kind of the same reason there. I'll start this way because you like horrible podcast hosts have the same exact top.
Look, we did not converse about what the rankings
were.
We
did not. I had Goff at 10.
Me too.
I think it's probably, I'm a little maybe more pro Goff. There is still flaws to him playing outside. He's not mobile. And there's once in a while where the Houston game we saw where he just kind of like, his brain breaks a little. He starts just chucking it. But also, he's been a high-level NFC quarterback now for years. And, again, we'll see if this is the year it breaks. Was it Ben Johnson? Was it look, it's not like he's had bad offensive coordinators in his career post Jeff Fisher. But, Goff the last 3 years, Pro Bowler twice, top 5 MVP finisher last year. He threw for 4,700 yards and 37 touchdowns, 73% completion. It's really hard for me to sit there and poo-poo that. He's still in his prime. He's 30 years old. Even in the playoffs, he wasn't great, obviously, but the year before he was 4 touchdowns, no picks in the playoffs. So it's not like he's a proverbial playoff choker, right?
And they lost that playoff game because they couldn't stop Washington, and their defense.
They were going to lose that game no matter what.
As we detailed, their defense didn't have anybody left by that point in the season.
I last second flipped flipped Dak and Baker. So transparently, I initially had Dak at 12. I'm really high on Dak. Dak's biggest issue is, I know people point to the playoffs, is he going to be on the field? Look, Dak's he's 31 years old. Wasn't great last year, but the year before led the league in touchdowns, was second in the MVP voting. It's not like he's not so far removed from being a legit top 2 finisher in the MVP. So I had Dak at 9. 8, I had Jalen Hurts. I could have argued Hurts at 12, and I could have argued him at 6. I figured 8 was the way, probably the most kind way to put it. I didn't think Jalen Hurts was very good in the playoffs last year. I don't know if I watched a different game, and maybe I'm grading him on a different scale because he's had some of the best help I've ever seen in an NFL, offense. I mean, play callers to offensive lines every year are amazing. He's got arguably the best receiver in the NFL. He's got arguably the best number 2 receiver in the NFL. He's got a great tight end room. He's got the best offensive line every year, and he's got the best running back. He's got an elite defense. It's pretty hard to mess up, and he's in a bad conference. So all that said, they won the Super Bowl last year, and Jalen Hurts has been in the Super Bowl 2 of the last 3 years, and he deserves every bit of praise. I don't think he's better than any of the guys in front of him, and I would argue that this 5 or 6 guys behind him have every right to think they're just as good. So that's kind of why I figured 8 made the most sense. I have Stafford at 7. I wanted to put Stafford at 5, but I just feel like last year there was a little bit of Matt's talked about this. The arm's a little he's taken a gazillion hits and he's 38 years old. The arm's 10% less than it used to be. So it's hard for me to put him at 5. But he's still a great quarterback, and so for me, 7, I had Stafford in 6. This is where my hardest decision was Daniels versus Herbert. I went with Herbert at 6. I know I told you I was lower on Jayden. I actually thought about it more. I'm like, again, maybe it's too high and it's 1 year and it's breaking everything. He was better in the playoffs than Justin Herbert was, and that was my tiebreaker. It was just Herbert doesn't have a playoff win, and Jayden Daniels won multiple games in his first playoff appearance. And I even thought the Philly game, he was pretty obviously the best player on the field outside of anybody really. So Herbert's amazing. I don't get the I know Nick Wright thinks he stinks, but other than that, everyone seems to agree he's very good. I'd like to see Herbert be a little more aggressive. I think he could put up he feel like he was so aggressive early on in his career, and he's kind of backed off to doesn't ever turn the football over.
Yep.
But he's just, I wish he was a little more big play savvy at this point. And again, Daniels was fantastic. Jayden does need to repeat. There needs to be for him to stay here, it needs to be pretty. It's got to be not the same maybe, but it needs to be pretty close, because there was a couple fluky things in there. There's some fluky thing like the Hail Mary. Even the end of that Cowboys game was the fluky play where Dallas just their brain broke. You're up multiple touchdowns. Maybe don't play press man. Whatever. But yeah, that's so to recap there. I had Goff at 10, Dak at 9, Hurts 8, Stafford 7, and Herbert 6. Mike, I'm sure yours is pretty damn close.
Yeah, I have Goff at 10. You and I in lockstep on that one. Different year. He's got John Morton as the new OC, former Jets OC, as we've mentioned. One of the things I really appreciate about Goff is he throws that dig, skinny, that ball. He throws that as well as any quarterback. He drives his ball. I thought last year was the best year I've seen him against pressure. And so is that sustainable going forward? Or was that just hey, we had the right answers for the most part last year and I was feeling it, and, there's a step back this year. But if he's that same guy versus pressure, I don't know that Detroit will drop off as much as people think they will. Again, I feel like this is now as I mentioned with Mayfield, it's a Jared Goff offense now. Morton is there to let's put my little wrinkles on it. Let's have some different counters to some of the stuff we did. What did we have problems with last year? How can we find answers to that? But in general, Jared's been doing this long enough now where it feels like this is what Jared wants to do, and they'll find little things to do with it. I had Dak at 9. I could have made the case that he's 5. Had he played last year, the whole year, I probably would have had him at 5. I thought your point was excellent about his 2023 season was awesome. 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, 9 picks. He was in the MVP conversation for a better part of that year. They've given him George Pickens. We'll see what that does. If Pickens is on his best behavior, which he hasn't been since he walked in the league or when he was at Georgia. So this just may be who George Pickens is, but it certainly is from a talent perspective, an upgrade over what they've had there next to CD Lamb. And then we'll see how we adjust to the Brian Schottenheimer offense, where Schottenheimer has in the past wanted to be a more balanced, occasionally a run-first football team. That's not how the league works. We'll see how they sort of integrate that. But Dak does turn 32 at the start of camp. So he's not a young man anymore, and the injuries have mounted. So I had Herbert at 8. I thought, to your point, he was too conservative last year. And look, 23-3 touchdowns to interceptions is awesome. I know PFF just raves about him as the best, this, that, and the other thing. But once again, big game, big moment, 4 interceptions in the playoffs. He just melted down against Houston. So he's got this thing that he hasn't gotten over yet. And look, I think they were ahead of schedule last year, which is typical with a Harbaugh team. I don't know that they had a lot of youth. They're relying a lot on draft picks, first round running back, Amarian Hampton, second round receiver, Trey Harris, another receiver drafted later on. They're putting a lot into the youth bag here. Tyler Conklin was the nice add, I thought, for them at tight end. But I look at the outside guys and I say, again, it's Ladd McConkey, and then you're hoping, either you're hoping Harris takes a big step in his rookie year, or you're hoping Mike Williams enters the Wayback Machine, which I don't think either one of us believe is going to happen. He had Joshua Palmer on the team last year, couldn't totally utilize him. Palmer now off to Buffalo. So, I like their offensive line a lot. he needs to be a little bit more, take some shots. I know maybe that's just how Harbaugh wants him to play, but there's too much talent there for it to bog down like it did. I had Jalen Hurts number 7. I thought he was better in the playoffs than you did, but I thought for the better part of the regular season, he was and I think that's led to the frustration with A.J. Brown, which, by the way, Dallas Goedert saying they're great. Those two are awesome. Nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. Nice job, Goddard, doing a good job for spreading the team message, but we'll monitor that all year long. Guys don't read books on the sidelines. That just doesn't happen unless there's weird stuff going on there. He pushed the ball more last year. I'll give him that. Averaged 8 yards per attempt last season, which was a considerable jump for him from previous years. Again, played 15 games, dealt with some injuries. I thought maybe that's why he was a little bit better in the postseason, was that he was feeling a little bit better. The one thing about him is, for the way they play and the way they can play because of that offensive line, the tush push, but some of the QB power stuff, some of the stuff, he's not as fast as he was when he first came in the league, maybe not even as good of a runner, but he sort of fits the style that they want to play. So I had him at 7. Again, Dak, Herbert, Goff, all those guys could jump him, or he could get back to being what he was a couple of years ago when I thought he had a chance to be a top 5 quarterback. And not that 7 is the worst place to be. I had Stafford at 6, and I thought long and hard about putting him 5 as well. Look, he's dealt with the arm thing for a while. There's been multiple off seasons where people wondered if he could continue, like if the arm was going to be the thing that made him give it up. He's back. They worked out a contract.
You think this is it too, right?
I would. Yes, it certainly feels that way. They got a really good football team, and he's been a really good player for them. Sort of went from, I almost feel like he's still underrated.
Yeah.
I feel like people just don't. He's really good. When you watch him, he's just really good. Week in, week out. He's that guy. And then I have Jayden Daniels at 5. Look, he was awesome last year, and there were a couple of variances, as you mentioned, the Hail Mary thing. I'll be curious to see how they handle teams having a full offseason to look at them. Look at Cliff's offense, which, last year didn't take the dip that it normally does. The only time it really took a dip was when Jayden was beat up a little bit. But he was better than I thought he was going to be. I mean, I was a Caleb, Drake, Jayden in that order, and it was pretty clear it was Jayden after year 1, then it was Drake, and then it was Caleb. We'll see if that continues, but certainly I have a good vibe about what they're doing. They just got to get the Terry McLaurin thing done. I know it has nothing to do with Jayden Daniels in terms of he doesn't make these decisions, but he's still not happy. Jeremy Fowler is out there reporting it. Just figure it out, man. Give him the $30 million, shut up, deal with it. And if you have to eat some bad money at the end, you have to eat some bad money at the end, because beyond him, they're lean, and that, as we can see, can really affect a quarterback. Prizepicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players, up to 6, for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Plenty of sports that you can look at now and cross sports, as they allow you to do. Women's basketball, baseball, racing, all kinds of stuff. Apps it's really easy to use, super easy to use. In fact, they have the demons and the goblins. You can sort of change your perspective on that. So just download the app, use the code CLNS, get 50 off your first $5 if you're a first-time user. Again, download the app today, use the code CLNS to get 50 off your first 5. Prizepicks, run your game. So here we are. It's top 5 time.
Over under how many Pro Bowls do you think Matt Stafford has made, or all pros?
I would say he has been a 1-time All-Pro and a 3-time Pro Bowler. 2
Pro Bowls, no All Pros. I transparently found that crazy. I don't know. It was just weird to me that he, for a 17-game season, he averages 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, and has made 2 Pro Bowls. I know the NFC was stacked early in his career, and he was on the bad team, and then recently, a couple years didn't play the full season, or kind of, didn't have the flashier numbers, but like he didn't make the Pro Bowl the first year in LA when he had 4,900 yards and 41 touchdowns. So that's my point of when you hear say Pro Bowl quarterback, like Mac Jones is a Pro Bowler as a rookie.
Right.
Just take it with a grain of salt. 5 through.
Wait, how the hell did he not make? How did he not make it in his first year?
I don't know.
Like,
I gotta look back and see the Pro Bowlers. They were 12-5. Were they not the 1 seed? Am I like
won the Super Bowl? That's the we're.
Oh, I know. I just feel like who, like why is I don't
100
understand.
yards and 41 touchdowns. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 4,900 yards.
4,900 yards and 41 touchdowns.
Pro Bowl wise in the NFC, it's because freaking Brady and Rodgers. Obviously, Rodgers and Brady are all pros and the two first Pro Bowlers. Kyler Murray was a Pro Bowler with 3,700 yards, 24 touchdowns. Dak was a Pro Bowler. Then Kirk Cousins was the next alternate. Stafford, and then Russell Wilson after that. I don't know what happened there.
What were Brady? Do you have Brady's numbers from that year?
Yeah, 5,300 yards, 43 touchdowns at age 44. Rodgers is the MVP that year, 37.
If he came back today, would he throw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns?
Here's the Jets quarterback. I think I'd pick them to win 12 games. 5 through 1, we talked about Jayden. I don't want to kind of go on and on about Jayden at 5. I have Burrow at 4, and I honestly almost put Burrow at 5. I might be a Joe Burrow hater.
You are a little bit. We might have beef here. Go ahead.
My only thing with Joe is like I think he's almost in a class by himself. I think he's an elite quarterback, but he's not as elite as the other 3 guys. I don't know how to I don't know why. I think Big Cat and PMT put it out there, like they put out their rankings, right? And they always have like a funny like tier, and they had like the Jayden Daniels tier, like just Jayden Daniels. I think there's just the Joe Burrow tier. Like Joe makes them a lot better. He's obviously very good. I worry about the health stuff with Joe a little bit more than I do with Lamar and Josh. I just think he takes so many hits, and I think he's so his body was he's just a slighter frame, and he doesn't move the way Lamar moves, so it's a little awkward there. This is where I not worry, but this is where I kind of land with the Bengals and just Joe Burrow in general. They have not done right by him, obviously, in a lot of ways. They have in some ways. Like, let's not pretend like he doesn't have a lot of the weapons he has and these different things. He was unbelievable last year, 100%. He also threw the ball like 700 times. So I think they kind of his stats, again, like Rodgers had this thing where like, oh, wow, Rodgers actually numbers are really good. It's like he threw the ball the 3rd most time in the league. I think he was the 4th finisher in MVP last year, and I think he's the 4th best quarterback. Again, you could argue any given Sunday he could be 1. I also think any given Sunday, like I'd still pick Lamar, Josh, and Patrick over him. The playoff success, like Joe's been really good in the playoffs, but he's been there twice. That's where it's hard for me. It's like 2021 and 2022 is really good, and obviously winning in Kansas City, he's going to be able to live off that for a long time. It's the Mahomes stopper. It's like Eli with Brady. It's like, well, it happened twice. But again, like it's not hating on Joe in any way. Josh was so damn good last year, and it's like I'm going to have Josh at 3. And Lamar to me he wins the MVP every year, so it's hard for me to put Joe over him. And the Ravens beat the Bengals, I feel like, every time, where it's like Joe puts up really good numbers, and so does Lamar puts up just a little bit better, and his team's a little better, and his coaching is obviously better. So it's a team sport, and again, it's hard with these quarterbacks to weigh where wins and losses versus stats and these different things. I think Joe's the perfect example in today's NFL of, the individual versus the team, where like I think he has to lift his team up maybe more than any of these other 3 guys. And then I have Patrick at 1. It's hard not to put Mahomes at 1, although I don't think he was the best quarterback in the league.
Wait, you just confused me. You had Patrick at 1, but it's hard.
Patrick 1, Lamar 2, Josh 3, Joe 4.
Okay.
I think Patrick could argue is the 4th best quarterback last year of these 4 guys, but I also think that he's in the Super Bowl pretty much every year winning it, and there's a lot of years where Tom was maybe the 4th best quarterback, but like not a lot of years. There were some years, whatever. But hey, Peyton's better this year. Aaron's better. Drew's better. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I kind of went a little chalk with this, where I feel like I stacked MVP awards and Joe finished 4th, unfortunately. But again, like I don't think it's hating on Joe per se. Maybe it is a little bit. He was excellent last year, like I said. I just worry there's been multiple years in the 4 or 5 years as a starter where he's missed significant time. And last year I felt like he was like one more hit away from missing time. And I just worry a little bit of like, not that this is his fault, but we did ding other guys for it. It's not Tua's fault he gets hurt either. You know, it's so, again, Joe 4. I wanted to put Josh 2. I ended up at 3 because I think it's hard for me to not put Lamar 2 when he wins the MVP every year. It's like at some point, like I just feel like it's disrespectful to not have him at 2. And again, I think if I'm starting a team for next year, I think I'd rather have Lamar slightly, very slightly, but just a little bit. And then Patrick, like I said, Patrick at 1 is a hard, just, I don't know. I didn't want to do it, but I also don't want to be hot takey. That's not who I am, and put him at, 2 or 3.
So very interesting, because I debated this hard, and at various points, I mean, my orders were, yeah, I could do this, because you're trying to like, well, I'm not doing it for like who I want to win one game tomorrow. I'm not doing it just based strictly on what happened last season. There's so many different ways you can sort of measure this. I don't think this is hot takey, but I'm sure someone will spit it out at me like you're an idiot. And then when they win 15 games and they're in the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl again, you're going to yell at me and tell me I'm a fool. This is no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes. The last 2 years of Patrick Mahomes has not been awesome. Not entirely good, real good, damn good, excellent, right? Like, and you trust him in big moments. I just feel like the last couple of years of Patrick Mahomes haven't measured up to the first 4 or 5.
You ready for this, Mike?
I think the other guys are sort of the arrows up, and not that his arrow is down. And there's a lot of reasons. I sound like I'm making excuses because I don't want to be sounding like I'm crapping on him. I'm not. He's awesome.
I felt like just
I would take him. I would take him all day, every day. But right now, I feel really comfortable with the other 3 guys being ahead of him. And maybe it's just the slightest of percentages. But I had Mahomes 4. What were you?
I was going to say just to prove your point, which is going to be talking out both sides of my mouth. 17 starts for Joe, 16 for Patrick. The record, obviously, 15-1 for Mahomes, 9-8 for Burrow. This is part of the problem here. But Burrow, 4% better completion percentage, 1,000 more yards, 17 more passing touchdowns, 2 less interceptions, 15 points higher in quarterback rating, the same amount of rushing touchdowns. Joe was a Pro Bowler. Patrick was not. That's not even talking about Josh and Lamar, who were like superhuman at points last year. The problem I think that we run into with these quarterbacks is Patrick is the best in the biggest moments, except for Super Bowl, obviously, last year. But generally speaking, he's the best in the biggest stage. So it's really difficult where, like, not that Joe and Josh and Lamar aren't. Lamar probably is you could argue 4 if it's a big stage moment. He's had the least amount of success in the playoffs. I think that's where this just becomes complicated because we're ranking individuals, but they make so much of a difference in their team. Like, we give them so much credit when they win. And someone, I don't know, it's really complicated ranking quarterbacks where Patrick's been the 4th best guy last 2 years. You're 100% right. I just struggle because, like, if I was playing one game tomorrow, I'd want him as my quarterback. That's where it's a weird, you know what I mean? It's just a hard thing to figure out.
Which is why, and like I said, people are going to spit at me on the comments or whatever, and that's fine. Like, but I'm not trying to be hot takey. I think he's awesome. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. The level has come down a little bit. And look, if you gave him Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, maybe he's the one, with all those stats you had for Burrow, maybe he's the one got those. And if Burrow's playing with, Hollywood Brown and the fossil of Travis Kelce and, whatever else that they threw out at wide receiver last year, then the numbers probably would be different. But I'm just saying, this is just the way I felt about it the last couple of years. I think the 3 guys I have ahead of him have played better football than he has. So that's where I have Mahomes 4. I have Burrow 3. Yards per attempt went up last year. They're running into that scenario a couple of years ago in particular where they were getting the too high and they struggling to figure out how to beat the too high. And he threw a 4 interception game a couple seasons ago against Pittsburgh in the opener, just like pushing. And then finally figured just take the underneath, take the safe stuff. And now you start to get people to creep up, and Higgins is so good and Chase is so good. Now you're able to sort of figure out ways to get the ball over the top of them. Played the full 17 last year. Obviously was dealing with the wrist thing that you remember in the first game, kept shaking it out against the Patriots. You're like, what's going on there? Ended up at 70.6%, 4,900 yards, 43 touchdowns. Like, clearly got into a good groove, didn't bother him. At number 2, I have Lamar. 41-4, touchdown to interceptions, rushed for 915 yards. I've said it a million times about him. His growth as a pocket passer has been awesome. It wasn't who he was coming out of Louisville. Phenomenal guy with the ball in his hands, the most electric guy coming with the ball in his hands that we've probably seen in the last 10 years coming out of college. He had to grow into this role as a passer. And I remember talking to Devin McCourty, probably 2022, somewhere in that area, where he's like, Mike, man, totally different quarterback. Now, the way he plays from the pocket, you didn't have to worry about that when he first came into the league. Now he's got that down. He just has to, as you mentioned, he's got to do it in the postseason now. He's in that spot where it's just like, you gotta figure it out. You got to make a deep run. Again, if we put Mahomes on Baltimore last year, does Baltimore go to the Super Bowl? Probably. So this is where maybe I'm arguing against myself having Mahomes 4, but just Lamar, phenomenal talent. His growth as a quarterback.
48 touchdowns and 1 pick or 4 picks is disgusting.
Absurd. Yeah, he was awesome last year. And Josh Allen was the MVP last year. And as we've mentioned a million times, everyone thought they were going to take a step back. They took a step forward with the receiver by committee. No Diggs. Keon Coleman was meh. Like, his best receiver was Khalil Shakir. Dalton Kincaid didn't elevate because of the injuries. For some reason, they don't feel like they need to use Dawson Knox. But again, phenomenal regular season. Maybe some luck in terms of some of the turnovers that didn't happen last year. His interceptions were way down. We'll see if he can maintain that level or if it is sort of a regression and like he's at 13, 14 interception guy.
Josh's playoff stats?
So this is my point, because I know people are going to say, well, he keeps losing to Mahomes. Every year that they've lost to Mahomes, which is 4 years in a row, he's been awesome. He's played better, has better stats than Mahomes does. They just defensively, they haven't been able to stop Mahomes in the big moments. He's been great. He hasn't been the reason they've lost any of those games. And they've lost 3 of the 4 by 3 points or less.
Yeah.
Right.
He's
so
7-6. He's 7-6 in the playoffs. So you're right,
yep.
Right? Like, he doesn't get to the even to the Super Bowl. In the playoffs, if he's played 13 games, right? So 25 touchdowns, 4 picks. 2022, he had 3 of those picks. He's turned the ball over in his last, 2021, 9 touchdowns, no picks. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, as I said, in 2022. That obviously was, whatever. That was not a good performance.
Quote unquote rock bottom,
yeah.
right?
4 touchdowns, 0 picks, 2023. 4 touchdowns, 0 picks in 2024. His over 17 games, if he was playing a full season in the playoffs, 66%, 4,400 yards, 33 touchdowns, 5 picks. That's not including running the football, obviously, as we know, which, Josh is also very good at. In the playoffs, he also has, another 7 touchdowns and would have 9. He'd be 45 touchdowns, minimal turnovers, and 6,000 total yards in like a 17 game season of the playoffs. That's why it's so weird to me, because I feel like you're left wanting more with the Bills, but I don't think you're really left wanting more with Josh per se than just the Bills as a whole.
Right. And whereas with Lamar, some of the moments, the game against Kansas City at home 2 years ago, and look, there were other things, Zay Flowers, but the interception in the back of the end zone, stuff that you can't do. Even the way he started the game against Buffalo last year, same thing, sort of dug yourself a hole and then nearly pulled it out. Andrews drops the 2-point conversion, but hey, that's what happens. It's the full 60. And he's left me wanting in those moments. Josh hasn't left me wanting. The Bills as a defense have left me wanting, which is interesting because it's Sean McDermott's background, the head coach there. So again, Patrick Mahomes 4. It's not a slight. Number 3, Joe Burrow. Number 2, Lamar. And then number 1, Josh Allen. And you had Mahomes 1, Lamar 2, Josh 3, Joe 4.
Yep.
So that's about the most variance we had in terms of our rankings.
I know.
Again, the part about this is if you have any one of those 4 guys and you have a good football team, like you're a favorite. Like
You should be in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the put them on any one of their other rosters, and there's an elevation that's going to happen there. Pretty good exercise, fun exercise for me. We'll see what it looks like mid-year. We'll see what it looks like at the end of the year. Sort of we go back and look at the numbers, and we appreciate, we obviously want you chip in on the YouTube channel. Let us know where your rankings are. Forget about ripping ours. Tell me what yours are so we can hold you accountable just like you hold us accountable. A reminder, obviously, if you're listening to the show, go ahead and subscribe to it, which you probably already do. If you do, tell some of your friends. Maybe they'll jump on board as well. Leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel where you can find our show. A lot of good, great Patriots and league content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the All 32. We will see you next week when probably time to start thinking about divisional previews as we get into almost training camp mode. I cannot believe it's happened this fast. I got to get some more days at the beach, Will, before this hits, because when it does, it is over, and you don't come out of the bunker until sometime in February. He's Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Giardi. We'll talk to you soon.